What's up, everybody? Todd here with Citizen Defense. Welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be my dry fire series of videos of how to get started in dry fire and what you should be focused on for skill development. Now, this is going to be primarily focused for newer shooters who are wanting to start training at home to increase that curve of that skill development, and maybe some people that have they've dabbled in dry fire, but they're really not sure what they should be focusing on, okay? So that is the goal of this video. Now, this is also going to be tied together with my printable dry fire targets that I have on my website at www.citizendefense.net. And that is going to be my target focused dry fire targets, right? These are printable. Why are they target focused? Because they have these black reference points in the scoring zones to help you lock your vision onto that spot on the target. Now, I believe you should be target focused as well with iron sights, but this is going to be the most beneficial for people running red dots on their handguns, okay? So you can go to my website, you can print these out, and you can use them there, and I'm going to use these in this demo and talk about how I set things up and what we should be focused on getting started, and we'll take it from there to help you get going and get after it. Okay, so let's go over what we are going to need to get started in our dry fire regimen. Okay, we are going to need 2 of the printed out targets. I only have 1 here for representation. Painter's tape, dummy rounds, 1 magazine, a shot timer if you can afford one at this point in time, and your firearm unloaded and cleared with all ammunition removed from the area. So once we get our targets printed out, we want to use our painter's tape. I put the painter's tape on all 4 corners. I do it on the back just so there's no visual obstruction of any kind, drawing my vision to other points of the target. I just fold them over to themselves and stick it onto the back and stick it to my garage door. So we want to get these set up wherever we are going to have designated as our dry fire space. You can space them evenly apart, you can do them wide, you can do them closer, but we are going to need 2 of them for when it comes time to work on transitions. So make sure that we have 2 of them set up like this, and we'll move forward from there. So when it comes to dry fire, the easier that we can make it to conduct it, the more consistent we're going to be in engaging in that dry fire practice. So I highly recommend, if you have a space in your home that you can designate as like your dry fire area. You don't need a ton of space, right? You just need some space to work within. This is going to keep you from having to tear down and set up targets. If you can leave the targets up, that makes it easier for you to just get your gear on, go and start dry firing, and it'll help you be more consistent in, I don't have to constantly put these things up and tear them down and put them away. I can just go and engage in dry fire and start working on that skill development. So if you have an area like that that you can designate for, I highly recommend that you do so. Before we get started in dry fire, the number one thing we need to remember is that we need to have our firearm unloaded and cleared completely. Magazine removed from the firearm. We need to clear the chamber, visually inspect that there is nothing in the firearm. And once we do that, we need to remove all live ammunition from the area. Okay, I don't care what you think or how safe you are. If we have live ammunition in the area, there's a potential for the possibility of that to end up in the gun, and we don't want to have that at all. We want to stay safe at all times. What I recommend you do is when you take all your live ammunition and remove it from the area, put it in your safe. Just put it in your safe, lock it away, then you don't have to worry about it magically ending up somewhere, right? And happen to end up in your firearm, and then we have an ND, right? So we want to make sure that we remove all that live ammunition from the area. I highly recommend using dummy rounds for your dry fire. Now, this is for 2 reasons. It is going to be, number 1, an added layer of safety, right? If I have an inert dummy round in the firearm chamber, that it reduces the possibility of there being a live round in the chamber, right? If that makes sense. So if this is in there, a live round can't be in there. Also too, it reduces a little bit of the wear and tear on the back of your breech face from your striker dropping. You don't have to have this, but I do recommend this. Okay, so I have my target set up. This is my magazine with the dummy round. And just FYI, we will work reloads with only one magazine. Okay, and we'll go over that why later. Okay, so I have my firearm on. If you want to use an OWB or whatever, doesn't matter, but whatever you're using. So, okay, I have my dummy round in the chamber with a dummy round in the magazine, and I am ready to go. So grip is important, but when it comes to dry fire, we need to make sure that our grip is already established from live fire, okay? Because we need to have a mental note of that grip and make sure that we're gripping the gun the same way in dry fire as we are in live fire. So you need to make sure you go to the range and you establish that first in live fire. If you need tips on how to do that, you can go to my YouTube channel. I have a video on how to grip the gun to shoot faster. That's a good video that gives you a baseline understanding of how you should go and figure out your grip placement and hand pressures there. So we're going to conduct this dry fire. We're going to go ahead and exclude grip, okay, like a breakdown of it. We're going to assume the grip is already established. Now, like I said, I'm taking note and making sure that I am building my grip the same way every single time I dry fire. Because if I'm being loose with it, I'm not holding it the way that I should, I'm not gaining anything from that, right? I'm just creating deficiencies to have to overcome later, okay? So let's start with presentation, all right? So let's do presentation in the sense of somebody they're trying to get more of a consistency of presenting a target. Say they have a new red dot on their firearm and they're having troubles finding the dot, so we want to start cleaning that up. So before we even start doing anything from the holster on presentation, we're going to draw, we're going to build our grip, and we can start from here, right? So all I need to do is just present, stay target focused on that spot in the center of the target that we talked about, okay? And present to target and take note where that dot's coming into view every single time. And I just want to continue to do this with that consistency. Once I start building consistency, I can start doing it faster, right? I can start building presentation a little bit quicker, and then I can start adding into the draw. So this is a good way if you have a dot to start developing that consistent presentation every single time. You can do about 10 reps of that, okay? Now, presentation for me is something that is tied into the draw, which I'll get into later, okay? I don't do presentation in isolation. I just wanted to put that out there for people that are trying to learn with red dots, okay? So let's talk about trigger manipulation. Now, this is something that I always start off every dry fire session with in isolation, okay? So our goal with our trigger finger is we need to focus on isolation, right? Not adding any other input with this firing hand or pressing the trigger with our whole firing hand, because that leads to our low left for right-handed shooters and low right for left-handed shooters, okay? So this is a simple dry fire drill that will lead itself to understanding good trigger isolation. All we're going to do is present to the target, have your dot or your sights presented to that target focus spot on the target. You're going to put your finger just off the trigger, okay? And you can do this off of a timer, which I suggest is the best way, but if you don't have a timer, you can just do it whenever you're ready, okay? So this one has a par time on it already, but I'm not going off the par time. Just when I hear the beep, I'm pressing the trigger as quickly as I can. And what I'm paying attention to is any movement of the sights. I don't want the sights to move at all, or they should move very minimal, okay? So as long as we're pressing the trigger straight to the rear, we should see little to no movement in our sights. And that's what we're looking for, okay? So I'll do about 10 reps of this. Each time it beeps, I'm gonna press the trigger, okay? That's all we're doing, right? 10 reps of that. Oh, if my timer will work. And if you notice, my gun is not moving when I press the trigger. And that's what we're looking for. So if you didn't have a timer, you would just do something like this. Quiet your sights, target focus, press the trigger quickly. Press the trigger quickly. And all we're looking is to make sure that that sight is not moving. We're not adding any extra input into the gun. Okay, that's all we're looking for. So as I'm doing this, I can already feel some fatigue in my firing or my support hand in my forearm and in my firing hand support arm, right? Because I am gripping the gun, I am crushing with the support hand, and I am engaging my forearms to lock my wrists, right? So I'm already feeling that little bit of burn from doing that, and we should be feeling that when we dry fire. If you're not fatigued after your dry fire, you're not dry firing the right way, okay? So that's what I do for trigger manipulation. Now, let's go to the draw. All right, this is going to be pretty straightforward. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention is these dry fire targets are 1/6 scale. So what that means is every foot equals a yard, right? So that is a visual representation of a yard at 1 foot from that target. So you can kind of exchange your distances. Right now, what I'm doing represented here is 7 yards. I can go back to my all the way to my garage and represent like 15 yards. If you can find 1/3 scale targets, you can get 25-yard representation, right? So you can do a lot with dry fire and visual representation and what you're working on. So let's talk about the draw, okay? You can draw any kind of way that you want to, right? Whether you're starting from already a contained garment, right? I'm going from here, starting from the surrender position, and I'm trying to clear garment this way, or hands at side. It's really up to you. I recommend that you work all three so you're familiar with all of them, okay? So what do I do when I'm working the draw? For people starting off, I don't even want you using a timer. I want you to start looking for consistency, right? So I'm not really trying to race the clock. I'm looking for building consistency. So I'm going to get on the firearm, establish my grip, draw and present, okay? Not even pressing the trigger, right? All I'm doing is building that presentation. Oop, missed it there. Every single time, right? Once we build consistency, we can start adding speed and time constraints. Now, I've been trying to push times here. I have a 0.79 par time on this one. So let's see what things are looking like for me, right? And I encourage you, once you start developing consistency, to start pushing outside of your comfort zone, because that's how we're going to progress, right? We don't get better by staying stagnant, okay? So let's see what we have here. So I was slow. I fumbled my grip. That was better. Sights landed right where they needed to, and I pressed the trigger immediately. One more time. Oh. Okay. And that's all I'm doing. I'll do about 10 reps of that, or as many as I feel like I need to, right? But I'm making sure that that grip is exactly the way it would be as if I'm live on the range. So when it comes to transitions, I like to work them in isolation, but we can easily layer them in as a full drill, right, or some sort of course of fire. But starting off, I recommend working transitions in isolation. Now we have the targets with we have the focus point on there for our vision. You can see in the clip, I don't have these really far apart, but you can stage these far transitions. You can do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever you have space for to add difficulty to those transitions. But the key thing when it comes to transitions is we want to lead with our vision first, right? We don't want to be fixated on the dot and try to follow the dot to the spot. We want our eyes to go and the dot to follow. Now, these are close enough that I don't have to move my head. If this was like a far transition, it would be bang, and I would come over, right? Bang, get my eyes there first, lock on that small spot on the target, because then the dot's just going to follow. But here it's kind of the same concept, just in a smaller scale, right? My eyes are just moving to this point of reference first, and I want the dot to land there. So let's give a demo of this. Ideally, you can do it with the time. You should be doing it with the timer. Add a little bit of like go now. So we'll do one with that, and then we'll do a round without it. Okay, so I'm pressing the trigger as soon as it beeps, and then I'm transitioning and pressing the trigger again on the next one. One more time. Okay. And then I would just do vice versa. So left to right, right to left. So we'll do a couple without the timer. If I was doing it without the timer, it would just look like this. Okay. So that one came up a little short. My eyes didn't quite get to the spot on the target. Okay. And that's all we're doing, right? Nothing crazy. We're just working our eyes, getting our eyes warmed up, learning to lead the sights, not let the sights lead us. Okay. What we should be focusing on when we're conducting this drill and transitions is whenever we're making that transition to the second target, is the dot coming up short of the A zone? Are we overshooting the A zone? Are we landing right where we need to? And as soon as it lands, we're pressing the trigger, right? We're not hesitating, okay? Ultimately, the third one is what we are looking for, right? So if we're seeing that drag on, drag off, that lets us know, hey, something's off. Either I'm locked into the dot, I'm not really target focused, or I'm trying to drive the gun too fast, and that's what letting us come up short, or we're overshooting, right? So that's what we need to pay attention to. Like I said, quality over quantity. Okay, so we've talked about grip presentation, trigger manipulation, target focus transitions. Let's talk about reloads. Pretty basic, same thing, right? We want to work those in isolation as well. When it comes to reloads, I look at them as two ways: isolation and layered, right? So layered means I'm engaging in reloads within like a string of fire, right? So it'd be like one target, two target, reload, third target, okay? Isolation, I do two ways in isolation, and that is going to be for index. Now, before I get started on this, I want to talk about, I said that previously you only need one magazine for reloads. There's a reason for that. So I use the magazine that was in it. I tend to dry fire barefoot in my garage. I've dropped these magazines on top of my feet. They're not fun. Secondly, is going to be if I'm dropping these on concrete, I'm going to probably damage or have some issue with my magazine in the future, and I just don't want that. And then thirdly, I'm bending over to pick them up if I'm doing that at the time. And if I'm bending over and picking them up, I'm not dry fire. So not having to bend over and pick them up constantly lets me be more efficient with my time. Okay, so I just use one, remove it out, stow it, and then I will start from there, and I'm engaging the mag release every single time. Now let's talk about isolation. One isolation form of working reloads is going to be your index points, right? So I'm going to start with my hand staged on the magazine, present it to target, and then I'm going to bring the gun in at the same time, and I'm trying to stick that magazine into the mag well every time. Now I'm not doing a full reload. I'm just focusing on getting index points. Okay, that's all we're working on. Okay, so now after isolating index, we're going to come from presentation. Okay, so we're going to start here, and then we would press the trigger, come in, press the mag release, just like we're dropping a magazine, get the new one, fully reinsert, and get back on target. Now that would be something like a one reload, one drill, right? You can do one reload, ones in dry fire. I recommend you don't waste time doing them on the range and do them in dry fire. Just saves time and ammo, and you're getting the same kind of reps, right? So back on target. And what I'm really looking for is getting consistent reloads and getting my grip back on the gun and back on target. As you can see, I'm very slow from concealment. I don't work reloads from concealment that often. Mostly work them from competition. Belt, let's do it one more time for good measure. See if we can get some consistency. Okay, and that's it, right? And then stow this, holster, and that's it. So in conclusion here, wrapping everything up, when it comes to dry fire, the key thing that's really going to help us in our skill development is being very in tune with the information that we're gathering of what is happening with the sights and our input in the gun, right? Being very aware of what is happening and what we're doing, because if we're doing things incorrectly and we can be aware of that and see it, then we can correct it. And if we can correct it and recreate those deficiencies or identify them in our dry fire, then we can progress at a much quicker rate. And then, just executing the fundamentals, adding layers of difficulty, and getting to a point to where everything is running in the background and we can perform on demand. Outside of that, I hope everybody has very much enjoyed this. I hope it helps you out tremendously. Please give me feedback and let me know what you think. Get down in the comments. Once again, you can find these targets on my website at www.citizendefense.net. That will be linked below in the description. If you have not yet, please like this video, share it with your friends if you think it's helpful, subscribe to this channel. Also, go follow me over on Instagram. I'll have all that linked in the bottom as well. I hope everybody has a great week. Stay safe.